Hello, everybody. It's Jennifer, and I am back today with another spiritual roundtable where we forget the fluff. This is real women, real talk, and real spirituality. And you guys, I'm super excited about today's topic because it was a game changer for me when I fully understood this. So I want to take a minute. You guys know I like to forget the fluff. All of their bio, all the information for these beautiful women that are joining me today will be in the show notes, but I'm going to just quickly let them introduce themselves. You guys know me. I'm Jennifer Lonnberg, the host of this roundtable. You can find me on my website, Facebook, you know, all the drill. So sending you guys lots of love today. I can't wait to get started into this conversation. So we'll go to Tammy first because Mary Beth's actually been with me once before. So we'll let Tammy, since she's new to the group, we'll invite her to do her bio first and introduce herself to everyone.
Oh, I always love the bio part. I'm Tammy Braswell of Create by Vibration, and I've been sensitive to energy and spirits and all that. I don't like the word woo-woo, but I guess woo-woo since I was a little kid. So this just is an extension and expression of who I am, and now I get to share it and support and guide other women in living their best life and tuning into their intuition and really being more powerfully in charge of the way that they live their life. So that excites me a lot.
I love that so much. And woo woo is not a negative term on our on our show. We love it. We embrace it. It's fun. There are some things you can't even explain unless you just say it's just woo woo. So it's not a derogatory term on this show, at least. All right, Mary Beth, thank you so much for coming back with me. I always love the discussions that we have, and I'm so excited to get into today's topic.
Well, Jennifer, thank you for having me back. I'm really excited to be a part of this chat. My name is Mary Beth Gudewicz. I'm with Bella Nutrition Services, LLC. I am board certified in holistic nutrition, but I am also an intuitive. And I work a lot with women going through the menopause journey, all aspects of it, from the physical to the emotional, mental piece to the spiritual piece. And I just really enjoy giving people the tools they need to heal themselves.
I love that so much. I've got to throw this in here. I actually had a client a few weeks ago, one of my private clients, and she goes, I have to tell you, I've got to be honest. And I'm like, oh no, what? And she goes, I remember when you were going through, because menopause, you guys were at that, like some of us are at that age, right? So I remember telling her, like, or I think I remember saying how it was feeling or something I shared. So in the Ascension Club membership, you guys get the down and dirty, like this is the real reality of what life is like. And there was a couple times in some of the calls where I was like, this menopause stuff is just no joke, right? And she's like, I need to apologize to you because I remember when you were talking about that a couple of years ago. And I was like, oh my God, rolling my eyes in the background. And she goes, now I'm in it. Like, well, I'll tell you what, at least now you know you're not crazy, right? Because when we go through things, sometimes it's like you just need to know that you're not losing it when you go through certain changes. And we're going to be talking about that today because as women, and again, these topics, these roundtables, it's open. I leave it open. We have a main little topic, which we're going to be talking about permission work today. And I love that so much because I told her, I said, well, look, here's the thing. You have permission to go through it however it shows up for you, because not everybody is going to have the same experience.
Nope.
But I think it's one of those things that had I not shared, and this was through our discussion on the private call the other day, had I not shared 2 years ago or whatever it was when I was going through that, had I not shared that, she might not have known that it was something to be aware of or whatever. And I'm never about being a victim of it, but it was like, yo, this is like real. Like this happens. And this is like, it's so bizarre to me because I remember being in that when you're in the spiritual space, but you're still being human, you're like, from a spiritual perspective, like this is really bizarre watching this go on. And in the human, you're like, what the hell's happening?
A lot of these female shifts, though, that we experience are people don't talk about aspects. Even when I gave birth, I read the books and there were things that happened that were not in the books. I'm like, nobody said anything about what is that? It's like all
Right.
secret. We just have to go through it.
Right. Yeah, so I love that. And so I'm really excited today. Again, it's beautiful how today's topic is about permission work. And of course that Mary Beth is here with us talking about it. And Tammy, I love your work as well. So let's just get into this. So permission work, is so powerful. Like, I think for me, whenever I first heard it, I thought, this is so weird. What does this mean? And then I realized how little we give ourselves permission to live life on our terms because we've been so conditioned to do things a certain way, just like we're talking about on this topic, right? Like, this isn't going to be all about menopause, just FYI, but just for this topic and like the things that we go through as women, how for so long, so many things, including the spirituality, including the psychic gifts, including the intuition, including being empathic, like we haven't talked about this stuff. And so today we're going to talk about permission work and how, for me, one of the biggest things was permission to say no.
Yeah.
To things that I didn't want to do and I felt like I had to do. So let's just take this idea of permission work and let's get into today's topic. And again, you guys, no fluff, no BS. This is a real talk. So here we go into this discussion. Permission work.
You know, I want to add something to what you just said, Jennifer. I think so many times we as women feel guilty setting a boundary, saying no to something. And I always give the tool like there's 2 questions to ask. Number 1, does it serve me? And if the answer is no, then the second question is, does it serve the people that I'm living with? Whether you're still just living with your spouse, whether your kids are still under the roof. And if the answer is no, then it is a firm no. And I think we as women feel like we need to say yes to everything. We need to serve. We need to be there. When in reality, we have to fill our cup first. And we have to give ourselves the space and the permission to take the time we need to do our own self-healing, to fill our cup, to do what we need to do. And it's okay. Guilt-free.
I was so that girl. I was that person, that woman, that mom, that yes, 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 yes. Yes, will you be on PTO? Yes. Will you do this? Yes. Will you do this dinner? Yes. Would you run for it? Yes. Would you?
Yes.
Literally did it all. And it took I really feel like, for me anyway, it was really interesting to see the dynamic of giving myself permission to say no and how much I had to work through the guilt of that because I was always taught to be a doormat, honestly. Like I was always taught to give to and to be selfless, which sounds so noble, right? To give and be selfless. And you can still do those things and have healthy boundaries.
Correct.
So it was the learning how to be in that giving and that without being a doormat. So that's huge, learning how to set boundaries.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why we see so many women at this age having health issues or health challenges, because they've suppressed A, being their authentic selves, but B, also wanting to please or take care of everybody else first, because that's how we were raised, right? That was the programming then.
Well, if I may share how I came about the power of permission is that I was teaching a continuing education class at a community college that I created called Understanding Your Energy for Health and Happiness. And it was mostly retired women who were in it. And they would come in and they would ask me, because I was teaching about energy, they'd share about the guilt that they lived with and how do you shift guilt. So I channel and I went and asked, I'm like, what is it with guilt? How could I help them shift that understanding? And I got the message that it has to do with permission. We were taught that we get permission from everyone else. We have to wait for, is it okay with everybody else? And to choose ourselves behind, later or in the background, and maybe it's okay. And so when we give ourselves permission, we don't have to feel guilt anymore because we've said it's okay for whatever we're choosing to do. And it releases us from the guilt. And I just thought that was a very powerful experience. So I started to give myself permission for everything. I give myself permission to receive more of whatever I want. I get really specific. I give myself permission to allow my business to grow. I give myself permission to be healthy. I give myself permission for all the things I want to experience that I grew up and everybody else was supposed to tell me whether or not that was okay.
This makes me think of a conversation that you and I had. So I got to talk to Tammy and this is part of how I think I'm trying to remember how we decided on this topic, but the conversation that you and I had was so powerful because we were talking about it and you're like, just think about it. Like we've had to ask permission from the time we were little to even go to the bathroom. Like if you think about kids in school, if they're in a traditional regular school right now, they can't go to the bathroom without permission. And that's huge. And I have an experience of that when I was in first grade. It was awful. And so like, it's amazing to me how that landed in a whole different way. And I've been working with permission work for years now, but the conversation you and I had just a few weeks ago, it was profound. Like there's a whole nother level of that and a layer of that that I hadn't even thought of. So that conversation you and I had was so powerful because think about all the things that you've had to ask permission for.
Yeah.
And somebody could tell you for a body function that's a necessity. Your body's saying, go take care of this. And as a little kid, you are trained that someone gets to decide down to that specific of a necessity, and they can say no. And then I saw little kids wet their pants in school who just I gotta go. Your no is not going to stop what nature is calling. And it came up because I listened to your podcast and I went through your topics, and one was permission. And when I was listening, I'm like, oh yeah, she's getting it, because I think, today's my birthday and I'm turning 50. I turned 55, which is crazy. But that at this age, and the age of we're all probably in our 50s, right? So it's we were taught that, and the generations before us were taught that. Ask your spouse, ask your boss, even ask your children. I found, sometimes it's like, is this okay if I go do this and you stay home? It's crazy what we ask for permission for.
And I think when we're afraid to take that opportunity to be us or to do something because of that tied permission piece, I have seen health issues related to that. I'll give an example. I know of somebody who would sit at the dinner table. Father would not allow anybody to leave the dinner table. She had to go to the bathroom, and she dealt with constipation issues the rest of her life. I mean, that's when we see how ingrained that is. And like, I love what you said, Tammy, about teaching when that student came up to you and asked about, how do I release the guilt? That's so profound right there. Like when we can release the guilt, that'll shift everything in our bodies, in our minds, in our hearts.
Well, she actually had bladder cancer, the woman who was my focus for asking for that information. And she told me she took care of her son who had health limitations. She took care of her mother, who was very mean to her entire life, and she didn't even want to take care of her. And she felt like it was all on her. She had to do this. So then she had the health concern, and then she didn't even take time for herself through it all because they needed her.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge.
That's a paradigm we have to shift, ladies.
Yeah.
Like literally we have to shift that. So I don't usually do this on one of these round tables, but I want you, whoever's watching, to just take a minute right now, take a deep breath, and focus into your heart and ask, what do you need permission for? What do you need permission to do? What do you need permission to feel? What do you need permission? You fill it in, fill in that blank right there. Because this is huge, and this is so paradigm shifting for so many people. So I just want you to take that minute. And then I really want to talk about the power of women working together and giving each other permission. So that was something that when I first was working with this, I had a girlfriend of mine and I can't even remember what was going on, but she called, this was years ago, because as I'm remembering it, I'm seeing myself sitting on my porch back in the house. And this has to have been at least 8 years ago. And I remember hearing her and what she was telling me, and it just dawned on me, I'm like, she needs permission to just say, screw it and take the weekend off. And so I told her, I said, you know what? You have my permission to take the weekend off. And she just immediately started bawling. She goes, oh my God, I can't believe how that just felt. She's like, you're right. I need to give myself a break.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't know why we need to hear that. And I think maybe it's what we've been talking about we've been told what to do so many times, and we've had to ask for permission for so many things that we need to shift this paradigm, and we need to support each other in that. So I've had a few friends where I've actually said, look, I need you to give me permission to do this, because I know that hearing those words, right? Hearing the vibration. So everything we do is energy, including what we speak. And so when somebody speaks with you or to you or whatever, that vibration will unlock or adjust the energy in some way. And so just having somebody to support you and say, you have permission to feel pissed
Mhm.
off or angry or sad or whatever it might be. And to say you have permission to say no to about going to that thing that you don't want to go to, right? Can you guys think of other examples? Let's throw out, I feel like sometimes if we can share examples, it makes it so much more relatable and powerful.
That is powerful too. So that if you can't, or you don't feel, I don't want to use the word can't, you don't feel like you can give yourself permission quite yet, then to receive it from someone else who does it in a loving way, like you just said, asking someone, I'd really like to do this, could you give me permission, to start softening the energy, to get used to receiving permission that feels good to you, instead of the permission. Most of the permission never felt good. It was like, no, you can't do this, or let me think about it. Like, shouldn't have to ask somebody something and see what mood they're in to decide if I can choose to do something. So I like the sentence, I give myself permission. Or even like a softer way of doing it, I'm willing to give myself permission. That's a step back if you don't feel powerful, feel like you can step into the fullness of it yet. I give myself permission to sleep in today. I give myself permission to just relax, because I think
I'm
that's a
even,
challenge.
I love that. And I'm even going to go deeper. I think we also need to give ourselves permission to experience our emotions.
Oh,
I think on some level we feel like, oh, we shouldn't get angry about that, or we shouldn't feel frustrated about that or sad about that. I need to clamp that in instead of just giving yourself the permission to feel and express that emotion, but feel it first. Feel it just kind of come through you.
yes.
So I like to always look at like the words, right? And so I permission is to authorize or to grant authority or to allow, right? So allowing yourself to feel, allowing yourself to notice, allowing yourself to say no, right? Those are
Yeah.
all beautiful things. And Tammy, I love how you said that. I teach that a lot on working with affirmations, about how if you say I am XYZ, it may not feel good to you. So you have to say, I'm allowing myself, or I'm willing to believe that I can, right? So that's a beautiful way to work with permission work as well, is like you said, softening into it, because it's one of those things, if you've never done it before, it can be very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Yes.
It can be very uncomfortable. Do you guys have any like I know for me, again, the experience of just having permission was huge. Like permission to say no to taking on that next volunteer thing, right? One of the most powerful things, okay, this just came to me right now. One of the most powerful things that I ever learned about giving myself permission not to do something came in kind of a twofold lesson. It was that every time I said yes and stepped in to do something that I didn't really want to do, and this is like volunteering at the school or through in the 4-H
Mhm.
group or taking on that thing at church, or like there were so many different things that I volunteered and did. And and I can't even remember who told me this, but it was every time you step in to do something that you don't really want to do, you're actually taking somebody else's lesson where they could step up.
Ooh, I like that.
It was so profound.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to give myself permission to sit this one out. And then there was there was on the backside of that, there was a knowing that if I wasn't doing it, that meant somebody else was meant to fill that role. So I started learning to feel into myself, just like Mary Beth was saying, feel
Mhm.
into this. Is this something for me? Is this really
Mhm.
something I need to do? Because a lot of us that are intuitive or empathic have a really fun dance with codependency
Oh, hands
where
down.
we think we have to save the world and we have to do it all and it's all on our shoulders and we're the ones that have to do it, right? And so when we do that, if we can understand that, if we're feeling that we don't want to do something, and the first way you're going to know that is like, you can feel, I don't want to do this, or you start feeling contracted, your body starts feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this, I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Versus
Yep.
if you know you're meant to do something, it can be exciting and you feel expanded and your body feels, you know, ready to do it. So have that in the back of your mind that every time you feel like you don't want to, feel into that and ask why. Because if the why is it's not meant for you or it's not your thing to do, then you would actually be stepping in and taking somebody else's lesson or somebody else's thing that would get them to their next goal, right? Because if they step into that, maybe they get confidence and then they can go on to the next thing that they're supposed to do. So because we're all in this life together, we're all interconnected in some way, shape, or form. So that was a powerful thing that I can remember.
Well,
I-
the permission and the guilt elements, they feel like, and I actually see it energetically, and I work on this with clients, is carrying like a weight on your shoulders of I have to do this. Like you said, you say yes to everything, and then it becomes a heavy weight, and then it turns into physical issues, and it expands so much more. So even giving yourself permission to just set that heaviness off to the side for a minute and find that relaxing place and allowing your energy to open up. And then if you want to pick that back up, you're welcome to pick it up. But you start to notice you don't pick it up anymore, that you recognize that when it feels heavy, when you are going into that, I'm letting someone else choose for me, or I'm asking for permission outside myself.
I remember back, Jennifer, to my daughter being involved in all the activities in high school. And I remember I was going through a period where I wasn't feeling well. And I started asking, do I really need to do this or do I need to be a part of this? And I started just kind of branching off from there and doing what felt right and letting the rest go. And I remember at one point, my daughter being a high school girl, she was like, Mom, why do you have to be so weird? Why can't you be like the other mothers? And I remember that moment giving myself permission to be the weird mom. And I said, yep, I'm the weird mom. I'm going to own it. And I'm proud of it. And it's like, I gave myself permission in that moment to say, yeah, I am the weird mom. I'm not going to follow and do what everybody else is doing because it doesn't feel right to me, but I will do the things that I feel will help you or help the team or whatever the situation was. And I think we forget those moments when we're being judged also for our choices that we are giving ourselves permission for, to be able to acknowledge and own it and say, nope, yep, I've given myself permission to be this and I'm going to own it. And I think we forget to do that too.
I'm giggling because this makes me think about being the weird mom. When my daughter played club volleyball, and I'm sorry, this is where my brain's going, but this is why I'm like trying not to lose it while you're talking about it. You guys know I'm all about like all the stuff, right? So all the woo-woo, we'll call it. But I really love essential oils, and I remember I always had essential oils in my purse, and I would use them for myself, especially if the volleyball games were overwhelming or whatever. And I remember one time particularly, we were at the what's downtown Denver, the big conference center,
Convention center?
the convention center where they hold
Yep.
the state or it was
With
a
the bear
huge
looking in the
volleyball.
window?
Yes, with the bear. So that's in Denver. So yeah, that place. And it was so overwhelming because however many levels that is, and it was a huge, like I can't even remember how many volleyball teams were there. And it was just so overwhelming. And so I had my essential oils and I was breathing it for myself. And then Allie's like, Mom, give me some. So because I rubbed it in my hands and then I was just holding it and cupping it over my face so that I could breathe it in. And so I went like that with her and she breathed it in. And then the next thing we know, like all the girls are like, Jen, where's that smelly stuff? And I'm like, I want to sniff that stuff. Like, you guys stop saying that. It's gonna sound like we're giving you a hit of something over here. But it was just essential oils, but they wanted to smell the smelly stuff.
Oh my
Oh, it
God.
was so funny because it does, again, it shifts the energy but so being the weird mom, I totally relate to that a lot.
Mhm.
And it's about really just letting yourself be who you are.
Yes.
I relate to that. I was, the secret psychic for a long time because I didn't want people, I didn't care if people judged me, to be honest. I just didn't want my people to judge my family.
That's how
Right.
yeah,
So
that's me too. Hmm. I
yeah,
didn't
so
want it. My daughter, was going through what she was going through being a daughter, going through the teenage years. And for a while, it was like, okay, I'll just keep a lid on what I'm picking up or what's going on in this situation. But I finally just started owning it because, and when you give yourself permission to own it, it's freeing. And it's really like Jen, like what you said, it's so important to be our authentic selves. And I think we lose ourselves over the years. Like you talked about, Tammy, we're in our 50s and you lose yourself at some point. And not to go back to menopause, but I think through menopause, we find ourselves again and we find our authenticity and we find our
I think
permission.
either you do or you don't, and it
It's a
gets worse,
choice.
right? So like there's
Exactly.
always that whole there's always ways you can go through it, right? And and
Hands
I
down.
and I think this is another thing, right? So a lot of us are in the spiritual space. If you're watching, right? If you're watching this,
Mhm.
something about this, the spiritual round table. So there's something about spirituality that drew you into this conversation. And I think even in the spiritual space, like we need to give ourselves permission to be human.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I've seen as well with working with the women that I work with is like feeling guilty if they need something medically done because they're in the woo woo space, in the spiritual space. But I'm like, you're still human. It's okay to need the thing. Or like I always say it, if you're feeling something, give yourself permission to whatever it is you need. If you need an ibuprofen or a Tylenol or whatever, take it. Like
Mhm.
Yes.
don't only use essential oils thinking that it's the end of the world if you, I mean, we're in this human experience. Of
Mhm.
course you want to use all the natural things as much as possible. I am all about natural, everything natural
Mhm.
as much as possible.
Mhm.
But everybody's body is different.
Yep.
Everybody works differently and different things work for different people. So something that might work for me may not work for somebody else. It could be as simple as caffeine, right?
Mhm.
Like coffee or tea or whatever. Um, so again, giving ourselves permission to know what's right for us, giving
Correct.
ourselves permission to know, is this something that needs essential oil or should I take it? Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
I've seen people that beat themselves up that are like on the natural spectrum, and I've had clients like this. They beat themselves up because they had to go on an antibiotic for strep throat. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want to attack your heart and your kidneys? I don't think so. It's okay. Take the antibiotic. We'll support the digestive system while you're going through it. And it's going to help you feel better. It's going to help you get through it and get it knocked out of your body. So there is a time and place for everything. And I think when we go one extreme or the next, we got to bring ourselves back to the middle. Like, what do I need at this time? Permission.
Energetically, like I do everything energetically first, but then i I had to discover and allow myself to go, okay, I still am in a physical body. Sometimes it needs someone else to discover what it is more clearly for me, particularly for ourselves, because we're more attached to our stuff, and so
Mhm.
it gets more challenging to see exactly what it is. It's easier to see other people's stuff, but there are times, like you said, I had a vein procedure done, which I worked on that for a long time, cleared ancestral stuff and generational stuff and did all the work, and it was still there. So I was like, okay, it's just a physical. I mean, I received the message that it's a physical, it's been there long enough. Go have it taken care of physically. So I did that, and I took a couple of ibuprofen because I took my arnica and it just wasn't wasn't doing enough to, so I did a couple and it went away because I gave myself permission to go ahead and use that for now, and then I didn't have to use it a long period. But yeah, it's, we are still a human, and when we get into the spiritual stuff, I think that's part of the growth of it too, is that you get all excited, it's all spiritual now, I'm gonna be all up here, and then you realize, well, I'm still in the physical, so the two have to work together now, and then things become much easier.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. And I'm this, like, I know we're all in that same space, right? First thing I'm gonna do is try all the natural things.
Yep.
If that doesn't work, then I'll probably go to the doctor. But
Yep.
and again, you guys, that everything comes back to this whole idea of permission, giving yourself permission to be human. I think that's key right there, right? Like
Yeah.
giving yourself just permission to be human, especially for those of us on a spiritual journey. Um, and it's interesting, and I don't want to go into a different direction, but it's interesting how we can get so dogmatic about things, right? Thinking
Yes.
that it has to be a certain way. And what if we just gave ourselves permission to actually enjoy life and permission to make the choices that we really want to make?
To be in
Permission to,
flow
yeah,
also. Yeah.
yeah.
What's
Permission to
coming
be
to
in
us.
flow. Oh my God, I
Yeah.
love that. Permission to be in flow.
Yeah.
And life to be easy.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was making me giggle because there are days if I'm having emotional stuff's coming up and I give myself permission, I'll look and say it out loud. I'm being human. I get to have a human moment and then I get to be emotional, let it all move because that actually helps us to allow all the energy to move and we don't stifle it by
Yeah.
giving ourselves permission. Go, you know what? I'm angry, like you said earlier, Mary Beth. I'm angry or I'm upset or whatever that is. And it moves much quicker than if we try to push it back and go, no, I can't look at you right now. Then it keeps bumping, coming to the surface going, we need to be addressed.
Yeah. I think a big teacher too, and this is one that I think people fight permission to flow, is grief. I think they feel they have to be so stoic and so they have to keep it together. But what they don't realize is when you can have that big grief flush, and I call it the grief flush, you will always have grief depending on who you lost or what the situation is. But when you have what I call the big grief flush, where it's the big one and everything strange comes out of you and you're sobbing and you're angry and you're all these things. And when you allow that grief wash to happen, A, it's healthier for you because 10 years later, you may start to see some physical issues, but B, that relief coming out the other side of that and going, okay, that was really hard, but boy, do I feel better. And you're clearer in where you want to go.
Again, the other side of that, allowing yourself to be done with grief when it's time.
Exactly.
I've seen some women that like have lost their husband, their partner, whatever, and then they hold on to it forever.
Correct.
It's like you don't have to feel guilty. If they've passed on, take as long as you need. Process grief as
To
long as you
process
need.
it. Absolutely.
But process it and move through it and give yourself permission to get through it and get to the other side of it.
Live your life, because that partner or spouse doesn't want you sitting and holding on to them. They want you to live your human experience. And I think we forget that. Now, does that not mean that you might not be picking up a grapefruit in a store and all of a sudden it reminds you of the time you went to Florida with that spouse
absolutely.
and you start sobbing? Oh, that's going to happen, right? But you move through it.
Okay, so my grandpa passed when I was a senior in high school, and every once in a while he smoked a pipe, and every once in a while the tobacco smell just hits just right. And I'll still cry. But it's not like I'm not putting my life on hold because of the loss, right?
Exactly.
So it's not putting you have permission not to put your life on hold because of a loss. We'll put that in there as well.
I think
There
it's
are a lot of levels of loss too. It's not just the death of someone. It can
Nope.
be just a big change in life, a divorce, a child, we have adult children, them going and having their own life feels a little like a loss because that
So
who you were with being the mother is now gone. And now you have to figure out who you are now. And so all those there's a level of like grief energy to anything that feels like it ends and we have
job
to
loss.
process it.
Yeah.
So it's like finding that process of having your moment of that flush, of that allowing the emotions to come out in whatever way they want to come out. I even like to write letters like to the person or to the experience and vent all of it. That you don't give the letter to anyone. It's just releasing it, any way that you can really let it come out and finding that relief. And there is, it's like that heaviness, like lifting the weight off. It's like, oh, wow. I think we're so prone to, and trained through permission and conditioning that we almost live in a tense way all the time. And then when we find that little bit of relief, it's like, oh, that's what that feels like. Oh,
Mhm.
that's interesting.
I love that.
I
And
love
then
that too.
again, allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to enjoy life.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's something else that I see so many times with women in my world, in my community, because in the Facebook community, we have so there's so many different women, so many different ages. There's men too. So in the spiritual living community in Facebook, there's a lot of people in there. But it's interesting how you can almost tell the people that are like they're afraid to be judged for having too much fun or too much
Correct.
success or too
Correct.
much
Mhm.
love or too much friendship, or like it's such an interesting dichotomy of what you're not giving yourself permission to do, and then the reason behind it, right? What are the beliefs behind it that are holding you stuck in that? So permission work is so powerful. I love it so much.
I love it too.
So everybody who watches this, we're giving you permission to give yourself permission and to be happier and have more fun and let life be. I think of when we're a little kid, the playground and the fun and the just how excited we got to swing and be on the jungle gym and things like that. And it's finding that child part of us that is playful and likes to, see shapes in the clouds and just have more fun in life. We were conditioned to be serious after, like, you get a little older and now you need to be serious, and well, we need to have more fun.
Hmm. I think through that play and creativity, also ideas, inspiration can come, and you never know where it might lead you. I love that.
I see that too with a lot of the spiritual entrepreneurs that I work with. Almost every time I take on a new client and that's the focus that they want to work on is their business, the first thing I'll be is, where's your fun time in your schedule? And they're like, no, I have too many things to do. If you don't put that fun first and foremost, if you don't give yourself permission to take a break from your work, to enjoy the things that you want to do, to have a hobby, to take a nap, to whatever it is, if you don't give yourself permission to do that, you'll literally, like, it's such a suffocating energy that you won't be able to thrive in your business if you don't give yourself permission to do those things. So again, it's especially as we're really working with the energies of 2025 this year, it's
Yeah.
going to be powerful to be
Yeah.
able to allow yourself, give yourself permission to live life on your terms.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think one of the things too, I work with a lot of people on is like, it doesn't have to be a big fun, right? Like if I get this a lot, I'm just too busy. I'm too busy. I have this, I have that. I'm like, are you too busy to take 15 minutes and pick up that really fun fictional novel you're reading and just read a chapter? And they kind of stop and they're like, oh, I could do that. I'm like, you have no idea how much that's going to shift you. And you'll be fresher, you'll be clearer, and you'll be ready to face the next task at hand.
Sometimes even intuitive messages are about, like, you want an answer to something, and then you'll get like, go take a walk or go wash the dishes, and you're like, that has nothing to do with this thing, but it just wants you to quit being so tight on it and go do something else. So then you open and expand the energy to move. Then you get the response you want or the answer you're looking for. And again, it's that tension that we don't even realize we're so tense.
And I think, 2025, I just see, it's a fresh start. Give yourself permission to just enjoy the year.
Yes.
If something fun comes across, say yes. There was I think there's a great book called Untethered Soul, I think it's called. And the author spent a whole year saying yes to everything. I haven't read it yet, but it got recommended recently by a friend of mine. And I'm like, that's an interesting thought, to give yourself permission to be like, I'm going to see where the adventure leads. And the author ended up having some amazing experiences and meeting some very interesting people.
Well, there's a movie called The Yes Man with Jim Carrey, and I
I was
just
thinking
watched it
that too. I
on
was like,
purpose
I've
because
seen the
he
Yes
had to
Man.
get to a place of saying, yeah, he said no to everything. So he had to say yes, and his whole life changed. And real quick about the new year, I always get a theme energy. This year was exploration, like exploring ourselves, going
Oh, I
Fun.
love that.
like thinking of us as an archaeologist and going deep within ourselves. And this new energy is that's it, the new. That's what I see. The new the new choices, the new experiences, the new directions, the like walking into this year, like, yes, man, I am gonna see what new I can do.
I love
That's
that.
so fun. I love that. I love that so much. It's interesting too, because I don't usually feel like it's a new year until spring, but I really felt it shifting at the end of December.
Mhm.
So like this whole 2025 has an entirely new energy signature on it. So it's interesting to see how it's going to play out this year for sure.
Yeah.
I know, I'm
So
excited. I
It's a
am
big
excited for the
shift.
first time. I'm like you, Jennifer. Usually it's like April, I start getting my
yeah,
my goingness, and I'm like, no, I'm kind of excited. I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
It feels like a leap into something, like a true leap into
Yeah.
a whole new energy, like, wow, look at
Yeah.
this.
I love it so much. Well, ladies, I know we could chat about this forever. Thank you so, so much for coming on and talking about permission work. Is there anything you guys want to just like like a little message to tie it up? If not, it's okay, but I don't want to put you on the spot, but I kind of am. Do you have just something?
Mhm. I would say just give give yourself permission to do something fun every day. Doesn't have
Okay.
to be long. Could be 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes, could be 2 hours, doesn't matter. But each day in this new year, give yourself permission to do something fun.
I love that.
And I like to give yourself specific permission instead of that blanketed, like I give myself permission to be happy. Dial it in a little bit more and you'll watch bigger shifts happen and the energy move differently. We go, I give myself permission to really enjoy this cup of coffee or to really enjoy, relaxing on this Sunday afternoon.
Love that.
I love that so much, you guys.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming on and joining me today for this spiritual roundtable. I appreciate you both very, very much. And thanks for everybody that's watching. We'll see you guys next
Thank
time.
you.
Bye.